Aloha, my name is Jeremy Vaeni, and I am the author of the all-new I Am to Tell You This, and I Am to Tell You It Is Fiction, which is the long-winded sequel to another long-winded title, I Know Why the Aliens Don't Land. And originally this book was going to be called The Skeleton Key to All Worlds. In fact, I first wrote the sequel to I Know Why the Aliens Don't Land years and years ago, and it was always in my head, The Skeleton Key to All Worlds. And when I originally wrote it, way back when, I think around 2006-ish, I Know Why the Aliens Don't Land came out in 2003, I began writing it because sequel things started happening. I mean, the most immediate thing, which actually made it into this book, was the most blatant quote-unquote alien abduction that I've ever had. Of course, that happened after I wrote I Know Why the Aliens Don't Land, and not during, not, so I couldn't use it, obviously, for that. So it immediately struck me like, oh, yeah, of course, wah, wah, wah. Here comes the thing for the sequel, right? But then things started happening to people in the book that were very sequel-ish. A few of those made the cut, but ultimately I decided not to go that route of just sort of, the joke was going to be checking up on people is fun. I wonder what happened to so-and-so. And then we would see what happened to so-and-so, but it's always something awful. You know what I mean? Like, it's never... I mean, some of these things were newsworthy, and some of those newsworthy things made it into this book, but they weren't good. Which, so you take that plus the aspect of the sense of humor of the first book, which was a lot of misogyny, which was a lot of cynicism, and that style of sort of Gen X humor, questionable racy humor, let's call it. And I was no longer that person, even though these things were unfolding like a sequel kind of thing. I was no longer that person because I'd had these, let's put this in air quotes, spiritual events unfold in my life. And I was no longer, I no longer felt the attachment to that type of humor. And in fact, it kind of hurt me to actually write some of the things that I did. So I didn't feel good writing it. And even some of that made it into this book. So what was going to be the Skeleton Key to All Worlds, which was going to actually be the sequel to I Know Why the Aliens Don't Land and come out prior to Urgency. Urgency was always supposed to be the last book of the trilogy, really. Well, now there's no trilogy. I decided to gut some of the stuff from the Skeleton Key to All Worlds and put that in Urgency. And then I've gutted the rest of it and put it in this book, or a lot of it, not the rest of it, because like I said, some of it has to do with people who didn't fare so well in life, at least at that point. Who knows now? Maybe they're just fine now. So what is this book then? Well, it is a book that starts off as a sequel, but I hope that you notice that there's something a little odd about the book, which is that in the first book, of course, it's sort of an autobiographical tale, and so I am the protagonist, and I hope that it's pretty obvious from the word go that I'm going to be the antagonist in this book, and that's all I'll say about that. So right up front, there's this sort of tonal shift, which may not actually be really apparent because the senses of humor are the same. It's just where they're coming from is actually dirtier in that, like a little more cruel, let's say. At least in my head, that's cruel. And that was what was hard to write originally about it. And even now, keeping it in there, I recognize the cruelty, but it's a necessary evil for the story arc. Because this is not just an alien abduction book. This is not just an autobiographical tale. Like I said, this is a multi-dimensional thing. So the starting point of even what the book is has a couple of points of evolution. And ultimately what this book is about is rebirth, is about resurrection, is about becoming our, I don't want to say better selves, but whole sense of self. Now, along the way, you're going to learn quite a bit about what it means to think deeply about alien abductions, about reincarnation, about UFOs, reality itself, archetypes, a whole host of things are going to be presented in a way that, even if you're familiar with me, go deeper than anything that I've ever said. So, and it's going to happen twice in the book. So some things I will, at some point in the book, say things about that are deep, or probably as deep as anything you've heard that is deep about these subjects, maybe deeper, but then is going to go even deeper. So I think if you stick with it, you're going to get a lot more out of it than just some laughs or being offended, because there's a lot of offensive things in there. I hope, if I've done my job. But again, I'm the antagonist, right? And that wanting to be the antagonist thing kind of stems from sort of a joke between Tim Banal, who hosts podcast Banal of America, and I, about like wanting to turn heel, because we're both wrestling fans, pro wrestling fans, although I think we're both dwindling in how big of a wrestling fans we are at this point. But at least back when we used to talk about it, we talked about, wouldn't it be amazing if we just turned heel in ufology, if just all of a sudden we became bad guys? And, for the most part, I have, like just by circumstance, of having gone after hypnosis, having gone after the sort of sacred cows in ufology, having questioned the things that we should all be questioning but don't, because it's become this belief system that we pretend is not a belief system. We pretend that we really are out seeking the truth, but no, we're really clamping down on what we think we know so that we can have a sense of control in the world and not feel fear. It's the same old MO that we tackle everything in life with, right? So that's what we've done here, and to call it into question is to get crapped on by everybody, or by a lot of people. Not everybody, but by a lot of people. And to question the cottage industry, to call it the cottage industry of hypnosis-driven books, to call them out for the nonsense that they are, is to wreak havoc on yourself. Let's put it this way. It's a great way to lose friends and never be invited to conferences. Ting! Is I Am to Tell You This and I Am to Tell You It Is Fiction a work of fiction? That is an interesting question. The title would imply that it's not, but it's a tough call, because it unfolded in me, this so-called knowledge, sort of the big reveals that happen toward the end. They unfolded in me in the same complete way that truth does. That after having gone through the various spiritual, let's call them processes, for lack of a better term, that I went through, let's say this. Prior to having the big I Am experience, I had a wealth of insights about life, the universe, and everything. Just become me. Because that's what happens when you... all of this is covered in... Between urgency and this book, it's all covered. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, check it out. But just briefly, when you are emptied of the content of the self, essentially when the self dissolves, there's a moment of silence, of nothingness. And in that moment of silence, nothingness, truth becomes you. And that is a multifaceted thing. And one of the facets of that is truths, so how life works, the universal insights that you've probably seen elsewhere, in various religious contexts, or even your own parents just teaching you stuff. Well, that comes from somewhere, that innate sense of how things are, what goodness is and what rightness is. it all comes to you. And suddenly you start talking as though you've studied the greats of philosophy and religion, and you haven't. It just is you. So this came to me in the same way that did. Sort of, boom, here it is in its entirety. And I just, I didn't know what to do with it. And I talked about it a little bit on my podcast, The Experience, just in terms of saying, this happened. I think I'm going to write it out. I don't know how I'm going to present this, but, well, this is how I'm presenting it. So, is it a work of fiction? I mean, there's a lot of autobiographical stuff in there, and that stuff is all true. And some news article stuff, and that stuff is true. But the actual claim of knowing how reality works in minute detail, and all that I lay out there at the end, or all that gets laid out there, I should say, at the end, that came to me in a flash. And so it's much like anything else in the realm of spirit or this type of knowledge, even, unless you experience it directly, you don't know that it's true. You can guess at it, you can believe in it, you can discard it, you can disbelieve it, but you can't know unless you've experienced it. And I think this falls into that category. The category of even I can understand it intellectually. So it comes to me as an intellectualism, as an explanation. And even I can't know really that it's true until I die again, my sense of self, and until I let go again for the first time. And then we'll see what's what, right? So until such time as that happens, I can't know. But it's really interesting, I think. It's really interesting stuff, and I haven't seen it put this way. And so what's the point if it's, still a mystery? The point is that with all of these things that I mentioned before, from archetypes to aliens to dimensionality to reincarnation. Reincarnation, I didn't think I'd be writing about reincarnation, but here I am. So all of these things that we think we have pegged as either a disbeliever or a true believer, what has gotten lost is the fact that these are all unknowns. They may be unknowable, but they're definitely unknowns. And so we're better serving ourselves and the truth of these topics by treating them that way, by thinking deeply about them, by trying to get to some kernel of truth in there, rather than saying we've already got it. And treating this multi-dimensional topic of alien abductions, what we call alien abductions, which are, I would argue, neither alien nor abduction, but we treat them as though they're cardboard cutouts of themselves, that they're two-dimensional, right? These are alien doctors doing blah, 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 or these are space brothers and sisters, or these are hallucinations and misidentifications and fantasy proneness. Go down the list of things people say they know, and, it doesn't, none of them fit or fit totally. And so what's wrong with treating them with the seriousness and the depth that they deserve? And when I say seriousness, that doesn't mean I'm not making jokes, because that's part of seriousness. Humor and seriousness go hand in hand. They are not mutually exclusive. So all of this being the case, in interviews, I'm assuming I'll be doing interviews about this book, you can look forward to me saying awkward things like, well, in the book, what the book says. I'll be talking about what the book says, more than what I believe, because I think the book speaks for itself. And I haven't done that with any other book I've written. I like to pontificate about things and whatever, but I feel like, no, this is what the book says, how it says it. Let's frame any dialogue that way, because again, it's still a mystery even to me, what is fact and what is fiction about what I'm writing, because of the way it unfolded in me. It unfolded from a place of, instantaneous, there it is, sincerity. But is it? I can't know. At least not now. Who is my audience? Who is I am to tell you this, and I am to tell you it is fiction for? Who's going to enjoy reading this, I guess? The answer to that is everyone. No, not everyone. If you are a staunch supporter of it's all aliens and the hypnotically retrieved, co-created false memories that have been masquerading as fact for the last few decades are it, you're probably going to hate this book. If you're reading it and not getting the humor, or at least not getting that I get that I'm a bastard, you're probably not going to, you're just going to think I'm a bastard. Like, you're not going to enjoy the book. But that's the art, it's important for me to be that in the arc of the journey of this book. Not even the story, but just the book. So if you like things that you have to do a little work for, that leave you not just pondering, but also, if you want, you can look at why I placed words on the book cover the way I did. You can look at, for instance, there are no chapter numbers. The chapters are represented by sentences and maybe sentence fragments, but that tell a story of their own. And that story is also part of the story of the book. And each of those sentences and fragments also represent what the chapter is going to be. And some of that is going to be obvious and on the nose, and some of that you would have to work for and figure out if you want. You don't have to do any of that. It can just be a book that you read. But if you want, like I said, it's a multidimensional, really a piece of art, as well as, something that is deep, that is going to break your head, blow your mind, whatever, as well as something that is hopefully hilarious and you're laughing with as well. So, it's a whole bunch of things. But again, my experience with UFO world and alien abduction world and New Age people is that while they claim to get humor, they don't get humor. And a lot of them don't want it in these subjects because they think that you've got to be self-serious. And they don't actually want to ponder anything. They just want to have what they think they know reconfirmed. So if that's you, you're not going to like this book. If you're sick of all that crap, then this book is for you. So I feel that with my former podcast Paratopia, with my former broadcast partner Jeff Ritzman, that we, along with Emma Woods and Carol Rainey and probably Jack Brewer and in some ways Tyler Kochjohn, a number of people, but the two of us really at the helm, brought down alien abduction research a number of years ago, at least in terms of the hypnotically retrieved stuff. Called it all into question, showed how it was ludicrous, using the Emma Woods case as sort of the backbone of it, but, really, it is that anyway. So we did that, and I was a part of that, and we never replaced it with anything. We just, you know what I mean? It's like, so to me, this is also my way of saying, look, you don't need all of that stuff. You don't need to hold on to the false simply because you don't know where to go next. This provides you with, if not a direction of where to go next, and it does that. You can certainly pull the threads of the direction, but also it's a lesson in what it means to think deeply about these things. So how you decide to go next, not just where to go, but how you do it. How you don't do it is by saying, well, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and keep defending all of these, UFO cases and alien abduction cases and whatever. Your favorite researcher. That's not it. Just saying the word alien is not deep simply because your neighbors don't even want to talk about it without flinching or laughing. That doesn't make it deep. The subject should, I mean, it should, right? It should be deep, but it's not. That's that's not it. This is connected with us at a deep level. I present to you a completely new or different way of seeing what that could be. But again, also just the fact of it, the journey of it, and the stops along the way, I'm hoping will help spark something in the reader so that the reader is moving beyond what they've been told and even moving beyond their own sense of what depth means. Let's get to it. We don't have a lot of time, right? So in that sense, how you read is every bit as important as why you read this book or a book like this. All right, that's it. That's my pitch. September 15th. I am to tell you this, and I am to tell you it is fiction. Lands in your lap should you decide to purchase it. All right. It'll be on the Kindle and it'll be in paperback. Take care.